Hey, Gundam Maniacs. Welcome to the Gundam Explained Show. It is January 18th, the cold January 18th. It's been very cold for a lot of people of this year, 2024. I got to keep remembering that. I keep typing 2023 in official documentation still. But yeah, I'm your host, Adam Blue. It's so fun to be able to talk Gundam every week, especially with Steven of Midnight Hatter. Steven, what's up, man?
Hey, cheers. I gotta tell you, I am in pain this morning.
From what?
Um, I was in the process of letting my dog outside and, without giving too much away, I have a two-story house, I go into the basement to let my dog out into the backyard, and I was in the process of sending some nasty tweets this morning and lost my footing and went
Oh,
down the stairs before I realized I could what was happening. I was already at the bottom of the stairs, just like, ow, ow.
and was this from ice?
No, this is inside. I don't just
Oh,
carpeted stairs.
inside on the stairs. Oh, wow. But so you say it's because you're so focused on some angry tweets?
Yeah, you know how it is. Like when someone's wrong on the internet, it just sometimes you lose your footing. So,
Oh,
oh
that's
man.
I think that's a lesson,
Yeah,
right?
someone was trying to tell me, "Are you sure you want to send this tweet?" And then the funny thing is when I got to the bottom of the stairs, I was still holding my phone, and you know how if you shake your phone, it does like undo typing. It's like, "Oh, do you want to undo this?"
Oh, wow. That's pretty amazing. That's kinda like, yeah, the universe is saying something, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. The real dangers of disinformation is what Talos is saying.
No, but, no, that's cool. Well, yeah, and that's crazy because I was about to say, well, that, thinking you slipped on ice, that's but I guess that was inside. So that's a bad segue. Thanks, Steve. No. But, no, it's been so cold and crazy here the past, that, like, week or whatever. I mean, I guess it's different for everyone, but I think it's just like this past week is like a major storm, winter storm cell came through. Like,
Yeah.
Monday was a holiday, Martin Luther King birthday, and then Tuesday, the kids didn't have school because there was snow. And so it was like the kids got a nice little 2 days off after coming back from being off for Christmas.
Now you're coming off the back of a couple of office floods, and so how
Yeah,
has the winter weather affected, your irrigation? I'm glad that you got that ditch kind of dug out
yeah.
because I can only imagine it's bad enough having water pool around your electronics and your Gundams, but then like when that water becomes ice.
Well, it's funny you say that because that triggered the I had a dream. It must have been a couple days ago where water was coming in again, and I'm like, oh my god, like that's actually been a thing a couple times this past month or so where I'll have a dream of water coming into my office. Like I just see it somewhere. I'm like, oh my god. But no, it's so what's interesting is I had to pull up, where I have the fake grass, like the framing around the cement that's right outside my office. I had to pull it up to dig the ditch. And I haven't put it back yet because I need the guy. We're gonna have him come do it, but we need to cut a channel into the wood framing so water can go under there. Anyway,
Yeah.
so it's just been sitting up, which is fine because yeah, as the snow was melting and all the way, like nothing's coming in. So it's
Good, good.
and the way I arranged the office now is there's like a gap between the sliding glass door, which is the main culprit, and
Aha.
like my desk here. So I had a like a little bookcase there, and that was like blocking me to clean it quickly. But it's been a wild ride, and yeah, luckily with the snow and the water, it hasn't been too big of a deal. But real quick, I want to give a shout out. Let's see. Ian hits a great way to start my day off in self-care recharge than watching my dudes talk about some good old Gundam stuff. Yeah, that's a good way to start the
Yeah.
morning. But yeah, shout out to Ian, Talos, AC Bandit, Jagan Fan, Johnny Tacoma, Dan Vince. Good to see you all. And seeing some of you all again after yesterday's live stream on your channel. Links in the description. Always a lot of fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That was we got to talk about some in-person Gundam hangouts, which doesn't happen as often as I think it used to or
For
should for
sure.
that matter.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, that was actually fun to kinda hear what it's like where you're at doing these Gundam meetups or build nights because there's a lot of people. It sounded like a lot of different variety of hobbyists. So that's
Yeah, it was
definitely
really
pretty
cool.
cool. Um, yeah. So for today's, oh, sorry, I'm like live, like adjusting things. No, but for today's show, there's not a lot of crazy Gundam news. I think really the next thing we're all waiting for is Freedom to drop, and we
Yeah.
watch that. And here's the thing: it comes out the 26th, but we don't know. Like, is there going to be an English sub? Would there be an English dub? Which you think there would be, right? Because
I would hope so.
even, and I don't know if it has a dub, but like Stargazer got re-released on Blu-ray or reprint or whatever recently, and that in Twilight Axis, because that used to like be on eBay for like $100, but it was on the Crunchyroll store for like 20 or
Huh,
something.
there you go.
Yeah. So,
I
but
might have
anyway, I
to I might
feel
have to snag that because I do like that, I mean, I know that the story's not as exciting, and it doesn't really build the lore as much as, say, like, narrative does. You know,
right.
we had that long conversation last week about narrative, but I thought it was a nice little addition, and I love the design of the Tristan and that custom Zaku 3, so
Same
I'm
here, and I like that. Again, it's an example of like a short. It's a few little shorts that are like smashed together. So it's a way to get some quick, cool Gundam animation with cool suit designs that kind of fill in a little bit of lore. It's not
yeah.
anything crazy, but yeah, Johnny Tacoma talking about a third party GPO2, the Master Grade. I don't know if you saw that. That looks pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. I haven't, dived into that third party stuff, but I might need to because there's that third party Metal Zeta that I want to get. That enthusiast, I think it is, over on the Discord has shown off. That looks great.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
there's some really cool stuff out there, and I know that I've seen a lot of really awesome looking 3D printed kits that have kind of gone around. And of course, like, if you read some of these articles about like what's the builder's name, like Godfingers and things like that, like they'll say like, yeah, these STLs are not actually available because it is a third party kit, like it's not something that you can buy, you can't get your hands on the 3D printed files. It's just something for you to look at. And it's like, I bet you can find a way to get those parts.
yeah, yeah. There's got to be a way,
Yeah,
obviously. But no, that's no pretty cool. And yeah. So what has been going on this week, Gundam wise? So for me, last week, I remember I was expecting a package to arrive right before the live stream. It didn't. I was thinking, hey, maybe it'll be during the live stream, and it didn't. It was right after. But
perfect.
it's really cool, guys. So check this out. I love, I like collecting the little. This isn't the new one, but I like collecting these little figures. A new one they came out with is pretty obscure. If I can get that to, so it's a Federation, and it's cool that she's got this jacket. This
I
is a
love that.
character from the 7th team named Sally.
Yeah,
And it's like I vaguely remember, I think, looking that up, but then like lost that. It's such an obscure character, lost it to memory. Um, but they actually made a figure of her, which I find interesting. Although it's not accurate, they decided to make her just with a small top, which actually I want to say in the episode, unless there's a part of this that I forget, she was just wearing an Earth Federation jacket. I think it was sleeveless or something. So it's kind of weird that they went for this. I don't know.
well,
Oh.
there's probably concerns about overexposure.
Getting someone to buy something like this, it's easier when there's more skin to be shown, but
Yeah,
also came with this Earth Federation motorcycle that can hold a rifle.
that's awesome.
Yeah, like and I have the Xeon bike too. So it's like these aren't mobile suits, but it's still cool because it's part of the military weaponry. I'm always into that facet of Gundam and stuff. So um
Yeah,
yeah, really, and it's cool because this also came with an alternate head of a brown haired brown, I think it's brown long hair and sunglasses. So
interesting.
yeah, and I don't know if that's supposed to be another character, but they really make these. It's just so cool because I have like the pilots, I have Federation off, and like it's like cool how you can just change heads around. They all come with
Yeah.
alternate heads, so you can really make some cool, unique army soldiers, like individuals. And I went by your suggestion yesterday on your stream, and they're coming in the mail tomorrow. But the
Nice.
tiny magnets that I'm
Oh, yeah.
going to, you know, glue right into the bottom here of the foot, and there is a small cavity. It might be hard to see on stream. There's a small cavity that I could, not have to worry about it being too far in.
Well, I'm
And
glad you mentioned that because these are some of the magnets, like, so the one I showed on stream yesterday obviously was a little bit larger and kind of flat. These ones are ones that I've used on miniatures before.
wow,
This is a stack of them. Man, I don't know if I'm ever going to
that's
get the
so
camera to
small.
focus on these, but I mean, they're 1 millimeter in diameter. If I would lose one of these if I took, well, yep, it's gone. So,
Just get a giant
um,
magnet and wipe it across the floor.
yeah, I mean, I have a, so funny you mentioned that. I have a magnetic sheet here. This is
Oh
just
yeah,
like a flexible, we used it, well, back when I worked in retail, we used these for signs. Like, we'd put print signage, paste it on some of these magnetic sheets, and then we could swap out signage for various purposes. So I
smart
was like, I'm
magnet.
taking some of that home and using it for Gundam stuff.
Huh.
This is how I pick up magnets and loose metal parts on the floor. So
Like
go ahead
screws
and
and stuff like that. That's pretty smart. So then I did, yeah, I bought these, like on the back of phones, you can get those little metal plates that you can stick on. I bought
yeah,
like a whole pack of those. So what I'll do is, yeah, magnetize the feet, probably just one on each, and then be able to, because that's the main problem with these. As much as I like these, even if I took my time to set them up, one falling, they're all gonna fall. Like it's. I'm surprised they didn't try to come up with a system to already have a way to stand them. So,
yeah.
luckily, I'll solve it. Maybe I'll make a video about it. I just don't know how many people actually are into these, like here in the West,
Yeah, I
because
mean, they're so awesome, and I love, like you said, they make these, like, kind of, obscure characters, and they're good army builders. It's like having an army of Kenner stormtroopers. It's
yeah,
awesome,
yeah. That's the thing,
except
and
much
this.
more articulated.
Yeah, and that's yeah, it brings me back to when I was into collecting the Star figures at that size. I have like maybe 16 stormtroopers because they'd come out with one version, then later come out with more articulation, and then one that's more accurate, and then more articulation. There's even a time where I was custom building them because you would take one version they had, and then they released a new one. It was still inaccurate, but part of it was accurate. So then I'd kit bash and then make all these accurate stormtroopers. Then they just came out with accurate stormtroopers. That,
Eventually.
that was just a crazy time in my life where I was so obsessed with having accurate Star Wars action figures.
Hey, I mean, that's what my little brother does with, Marvel Legends figures. He's
Oh,
like, he's done things where he'll, like, make a TV show accurate Loki by taking, like, a Loki head and putting it on, like, a Daredevil casual outfit body where it's like, oh, he's wearing, like, the suit and
oh
tie and
yeah.
everything. So, I mean, it's such a, I honestly, I think that there is definitely a market, and, Bandai, whatever, Hasbro, whatever company, whatever toy company is listening to this podcast right now, there is definitely a market for just, like, kit bash figures. And if you were to just make, like, a grab bag of, like, here's 10 heads, 4 bodies,
Hands,
like,
yeah,
just
arm joints or something. Yeah. You're right. And that's what's interesting because if you go like on Instagram, especially if you're into like the toy collecting, you'll see like all of these people that create and make custom things for your action figures. Whether that's 3D printing, like you're doing, or they cast things, or the fabric. They'll make like capes and stuff like that. So, all that stuff. Oh, the Foosh is a perfect example of a company that does that. Yeah,
oh, there we go.
yeah, the Foosh, I used to watch them all the time. It's just then it's like when I'm done, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go buy those. And it's like I can't do that. That and Toy
Yeah.
Galaxy. Have you watched Toy Galaxy?
No, I
I think
haven't.
it's now called Secret Galaxy. There's a guy named Dan Larson, awesome host. He went from reviewing toys to then coming up with segments that are more, it's more like a TV show where he's a host talking about like toy lines, shows from the past, and then he started a second YouTube to just talk about the toy review part. But really cool, really cool channel.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah.
And of course, I always recommend Craftsman because, like, he gave a huge shout out to like the Glios figure system,
Oh, yeah.
which, that's like an open source, obviously limited articulation. It's just peg joints, but you can create action figures of that like Kenner three
Yeah,
inch
Era. Yeah.
scale.
That 5
So,
POA, I think that's what's considered. Yeah.
mhm,
The which is interesting because I see that stuff all the time, like, in Target, and, like, I I wonder if there's gonna be a time soon where that stuff is not gonna be popular anymore. Like, I think there's, like, this age where people have that income, disposable income for stuff like that, but they grew up with it, and then it's gonna shift, and then what's gonna be, like, the next adult, targeted toy line
right,
of
collectors.
yeah, yeah, exactly, but and then in some ways, I feel like it's blending too, which I think is good. That's why I think stuff like Fortnite is good, and good things that come out of the internet is things
Mhm.
become timeless because someone young can stumble across a YouTube video maybe about the real Ghostbusters cartoon and then, like, be into that in a way, that kids nowadays aren't because it doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. And I mean, especially with the way that physical media is now sort of on the way out and being gate kept, well, I don't know if gate kept is the right term, but I'm sure you commented on that Ubisoft news about like, oh, well, you better get used to not owning your games.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're just gonna license games from companies in the future. And we had that conversation a couple weeks ago about plastic reduction and how yeah, action figures might not be a thing in the future anyway because
Yeah.
of, just a transition. So I mean, I think that future generations, either everything's going to be like all digital or there's just going to be a different way of having these types of products and ways of enjoying things that maybe,
Or
you know,
like AR and VR gets to a point where it satisfies that need of, like, interacting instead of looking at, like, it's gonna be something.
yeah,
Yeah, Barry B talking about Hasbro's been trying to kill 3.75 lines. Yeah, so it's interesting because they had a cool Marvel line, Marvel Universe, that were 3.75-inch about figures. They killed that, but that came back.
yeah,
And I haven't bought any of them yet, but they're not as articulated and they're more standard, but they're still high quality. I haven't tried any of them yet. It's just I'm trying not to get back into that stuff. But with Star Wars, it's been interesting because for a while they'd come out with like reused Star Wars stuff. And I think the problem was less Hasbro and more this how Lucasfilm or Disney treated Star Wars because during the sequel trilogy, the figures weren't selling that great. For like Rise of Skywalker, they didn't make many figures from that movie because people weren't buying them.
yeah,
But when they would come out with like the
like legacy
man
collections.
yeah, it was the Mandalorian, Hasbro has their Kickstarter they do for
Yeah,
the Mandalorian.
Pulse.
Yeah, yeah, the Hasbro Pulse thing, and it was the sail barge. The most recent one I think was the Ghost from Rebels. Like, people are eating that stuff up. It's like, if they make it good quality, people will buy it. Or if it
Yeah.
comes from a good source, people will buy it. But, like, Rise of Skywalker, it even though those were good figures,
Yeah, and I was watching a movie review recently of, well, you and I have been talking about this a lot for the last few months, but I was watching a movie review of RoboCop, and they were talking about the bad guys from RoboCop, and this I promise this is related. um, so one of the things about like recent Star Wars and like Marvel movies and just kind of films in general, when you have like an action film with like a superhero or like a secret agent or some type of hero that is fighting against an organization or a group of bad guys, the bad guys are all these generic SWAT looking, like, do you recognize any bad guys from like Age of Ultron that aren't just Ultron? Do you recognize any of the bad guys besides like maybe the one or two guys that they fought at the end of like Endgame, but that aren't Thanos? It's like you've got all these just like nameless, faceless baddies that just get swept aside. But then you go back to like 80s movies like RoboCop, and it's like
yeah.
Boddicker's gang, each one of those guys had,
Like
like,
a
a
character.
personality.
Yeah.
It was like Cobra, you know? You had, like you had individual, like, lieutenants and bad guys that you could make action figures of. So what I'm getting at is, like, when you have a movie like Rise of Skywalker, who's the bad guy? You have Palpatine
Yeah.
and Kylo Ren. Like, you don't have enough people to make figures of.
Yeah.
So
No,
why
that's a
would
good
you
point.
even
Even the Knights of Ren, it's stuff like they made one figure and that was about it. And that's interesting because there's a movie. Did you ever see the movie Blind Fury with Rutger
No, I
Hauer?
didn't see that one.
You got to see it. Amazing movie. Came out late 80s, maybe. I forget when exactly, but it's a guy that was in Vietnam. His friend tried to save him. There was like a grenade that went off, and then the guy went blind, and then he was just the villagers took him in, were just helping him. And then once he was able to recover, he went back to the States to look for his friend. And he has like a cane and sunglasses, and he's just doing everything blind, but his cane has a sword in it, and he's become like a badass.
That's awesome.
And what's cool in that is they do the same thing. There's the main villain and then the henchmen, but each henchman is like a character. So whenever there's scenes where the bad guys have to do something, the henchmen are doing it as characters. Or when they're like, okay, we got to go get the guy. There's this scene where they go in the elevator and then they're like, okay, we got to get in the elevator, right? And then there's like three of them like, wait a minute, who pressed basement? Because now they have to wait for it go down to basement for it's just little things like that where you're right. Like
Yeah.
the 80s did a good job of characterizing each henchman.
Yeah, exactly, and, like, I mean, Tarantino knew this, that's why Kill Bill has, like, the various fights that the bride has to have, like, Oren Ishii
Oh yeah.
and Bill's brother, Bud, it's like each there's arcs, and that's the way video games are structured too, you have multiple boss fights until you get to the main boss. So, I mean, to me,
Yeah,
it's just easy marketing for more toys to be made. Um, not like that I'm encouraging more plastic or whatever, but the point is, like, you don't make the bad guys interesting enough to even warrant buying the toys.
exactly. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and Playmo Hike Dog Bike, cool name. He was bringing up Zatoichi. I don't know if you ever heard of Zatoichi because that's
Yeah.
actually what it's based off of. There's
So
different
I've heard of
iterations of it.
Zatoichi.
Um, what was there was one that came out, I think, like in the early 2000s, and that same actor, I think, came out with another version. I hadn't seen it yet. But I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Dan Vince, remember that Red Letter Media bit? Describe the following Star Wars characters. Somehow the sequels made it worse. Yeah, that's I love Red Letter Media.
Yeah, they're pretty funny.
It's funny because they've done a good job of being able to like be negative, but in a hilarious way, and it's not to be taken seriously. It's just I feel like they know how to do that, and most people have lost that art. You
Yeah,
know,
most people are just kind of, like, blindly angry.
yeah, exactly.
Speaking of
Um,
Blind Fury.
yeah, there you go. Blind Fury. Yeah, that's right. Um, okay, and then another thing, real quick, is the other thing that came in with that package was this MSD GM.
It's
It's
awesome.
supposed to be just a standard GM. Um, but with the origin style. But what I've learned from Talos is, there's a thing where the GMs have that little chin
Yeah.
thing poking out, and I think that looks weird. But even Talos was saying, even in Origin, there are GMs that exist without it. Like there were
Mhm.
just some that had it and some that didn't. I don't know how much that was intentional or not,
Yeah,
but
so, like, the GMs that Sayla pilots, at least in the manga, like, the GM that Sayla has actually has, like, a finned, I don't even know how to describe it, like a finned helmet. So
oh wow,
it kinda looks a little bit like the Shenlong Gundam, the way that the helmet fins out at the bottom, and it also has that chin piece.
okay. I'm gonna have to check that out because I even have like the first issue of Origin. I haven't even read it. I think I'm like halfway, or the first volume, whatever they call it. But what I'm gonna actually do with this, and Rogue, with his skills, has been kind of helping me figure out what to do. I'm gonna make this a White Dingo GM. I
Nice.
think
That's
I'm
gonna be
gonna
awesome.
shave off that chin, and then yeah, paint it just to
Well,
make a modern one.
heads up, that missile pod, so build night last Friday, that missile pod is the part that I was that I was saying the guy wanted to paint because it comes with like a
Stickers.
dozen little red stickers to fill in the tips of the
Yeah,
missiles.
look at that. That red, what might look like a line is really millions of little dots.
Which, I don't,
I'm gonna try it out because
yeah,
if you take your time with stickers, they will turn out good. But
they
you have
do.
to be willing to.
But when I was looking at the runners, like, cause he was kind of showing it, I was like, there's a perfect little gap here in the red part of the runner that you could have put like two, not individual missiles to go in the missile pod. That's too much. I get that, but like, if you have like the Zazabi, the high grade Zazabi kit, it has all three funnels are actually one piece that just sit inside the funnel rack. So, like, what if that piece, instead of being like, all one color and then just, making the missile pod one piece, they could have made it to where you have like one piece of individual missiles that go through.
Yeah,
Am I articulating
they
this?
they do that with the Zaku leg, the missiles pods on their legs.
Yeah.
I think there's some Zaku kits that do that. Yeah, that's a really good point. You know what? Johnny Tacoma brought up something. They had GMs like that in 8th MS team. Yeah, and I'm looking at a ground GM that has that extra little chin that sticks out. Never
Yeah.
realized it before. And then hold on, let me check my
Well, and Rogue New Type mentioned that there's that Ground War set that comes with the ground GM. The Ground War set actually comes with two GM heads, one that's the anime accurate and one
and
that
one.
has the chin.
So that's interesting. Like I guess then the chin thing is really a consistent thing. It just really depends on how the GM was manufactured.
Mhm.
That's amazing. I like getting that information from everybody. That's pretty cool stuff. Um, let's see, and then some other. Let's see, for $30, they really could have made that missile part into a color. Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to see though why they went with this. I'll probably figure out when I start putting it together because really someone had to be in a boardroom and be like, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do with this GM part of the sticker sheets. We're going to have 30 tiny red stickers. And
And
he was
it
like,
can't
yeah,
it can't be much more expensive to cast that extra plastic than it would be to have the laser cutter that goes in and die cuts each individual round hole for the stickers, like,
yeah, yeah. It's very interesting. That's why I feel like there has to be a reason it is done that way. Um,
yeah.
I'll get to the bottom of it. That'll be a whole video. Why red stickers? I don't know. That's I don't really care that much. But anyway, no, I'm blown away now that I see this like this. The chin on this GM doesn't look as crazy or crazy, not the word, as like off as the origin ones look. You know?
Yeah, the Origin ones almost seem like they're taller.
Yeah, it's just kind of a weird. Yeah, so that's interesting. Like, guys, right now my mind is blown and I'm having trouble recovering. Um,
Now that actually is the Anime,
yeah,
version of that GM head, 'cause I can tell you the high grade ground GM does not come with that head. It comes with, like, a flat face, which
interesting.
I actually kinda like the flat face better, but,
Okay. Yeah, I went to just grab my other one real quick from the 7th. Yeah, and it's the same thing. So yeah, that's
but that's the Robot Spirits, right?
yeah, same thing. Yeah, ver anime. Both of these are ver anime.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Um, even looking at the slave wraith, same thing.
Mhm.
Wow. The more you every day, there's something new to learn about Gundam. Isn't that great?
They keep us on our toes.
Oh, there we go. Ian had it at the same time. Um, no, so that's pretty cool. And you know what? I like GMs again because they're like the X-wing fighter, I guess in a way, like, or they're the clone troopers. Like so. For instance, I was watching Zeta the other day, and there's this one shot I love, and it's when I think it's when Emma is first going to the Argama. Right, it's the Argama
Yeah.
in that one. Yeah, and she's in the RX-78. No, the Mark
The
II.
ones yeah.
Yeah, the Mark II that's in Titan's colors, and behind her are all these Hyzaks. And so it's like if I'm playing like a war game, I feel like that is like what, a division, a platoon, a squad. I don't know, like where it's like
In
the
BattleTech, they call them like a lance, where it's
oh,
like yeah.
okay, because
But I mean, I guess in Gundam they call it a unit or a squad, right?
a
Like
squad, yeah,
whatever that smallest delineation of mobile suits
yeah.
is.
Where
Yeah,
there's where it seems like
detachment.
there's a leader type or like a general, and I don't know if that's ever discussed. Is it by suit or is it by rank? So Emma's in the Mark II, and then behind her are all these Hyzaks. I'm like, okay, that's sick. That's like the Titans like standard defense. Like when they're fighting, either attacking or defending. It's almost like Darth Vader in his TIE fighter, and then the other TIE fighters behind him.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and so and I wonder how accurate that is. Again, if there's like a name for it, because I would love to do a video where it's like, okay, during the Grips conflict, during the battles when they would send out a squad, there would be a general unit, and it would be this mobile suit, and then there would be the other ones. Like, is the Gaza Seas supposed to be like maybe a little higher up than the Hyzak?
Well, that would be because the Hyzak was the Titans
Yeah.
default mobile suit. The Gaza was Axis.
Okay, then
So
what
it
am
would have
I
been
thinking of then?
uh,
What was Jared
like
in?
like the Marisai?
That's what I'm thinking of, the Marisai.
Yeah.
The Marisai would be like one above the Hyzak 2, I would assume.
Yeah, I think so. So, like, if you were to make like if you were to make like a Gundam chess set, then the
Yeah,
pawns would all be like Hyzaks, and
that's
then maybe
exactly
like the knights would be Marisais, the bishops would be like Gabthalays, something like that. And then
I
of course
like
the
that.
king would be the O, and the queen would be the Pallas Athena, or
Okay.
maybe the Masala. I don't know.
That's a good way to look at it, though. Yeah, using kind of chess as a way to, yeah, to figure that out, because that's the part. Again, if I'm trying to find the essence distilled down to what I really like about, the things I get into, like with Gundam, it is kind of like that squad formation. 08 MS
Yeah.
team does a great job of showing that off. Which again, it's good to remember for when you're recommending a Gundam. 08 team really does kind of show like the sort of logistics in a way of the combat, like of how
And that
so
that brings up
yeah,
a good point because it's
yeah,
like in 8th MS team, it's not like you had Gundams leading teams of GMs. You had a team of Gundams and then other teams of GMs. Like the Kojima battalion
yeah,
consists of like different types of units. So like maybe the Marisai wouldn't necessarily be a commander unit, but it would be like a special forces unit, similar
yeah,
to like how the Jestas were in Unicorn,
yeah.
where it's like the Jestas aren't necessarily, you wouldn't send like one Jesta to lead a group of Jagans. It would be like you have a unit of Jagans, a unit of Jestas, and then one Unicorn.
So in this actually brings up another point, even though I kind of want to get back to the other one, a
No,
grunt
sorry.
suit. No, no, this is good. A grunt suit, because to me, a grunt suit is that mass-produced kind of lowest common denominator. We can get a bunch of these out. So, like, I
Yeah.
wouldn't consider a Jesta to be a grunt suit.
No, no.
Okay. Because I think sometimes when people are talking about, oh, they want more grunt suits, their favorite grunt suits, I'm like, well, there's a Zaku 2 and a GM. Those are grunt suits. Like, I don't know what other, whatever else I guess was mass produced. Yeah, cannon fodder suits. That's another good
Red
way to put it.
shirts.
Um, yeah, because so for the original 1 Year War, we had the RX-78 2. That, and again, that was more of like a prototype to be like, okay, what kind of mobile suit we could build, and it just became kind of the leader or the general in combat, and you had the GMs, the gun cannons and gun tanks, and what's cool about all three of those is they had different functions. So
Yeah.
that's also again easy to visualize kind of the formation. You had a GM that's just the general purpose mobile suit. You had the gun tank, which you would think ground based, but no, gun tanks were in space too. But they kind of have like their artillery, even though the gun cannon does too, but it different mobility.
Yeah.
Um, and were there any other Federation suits later in the 1 Year War other than GM variants and gun cannon variants and I think that's about it.
Yeah, not that I can think of.
I think it was
What's
mainly.
interesting is that in the original series, the ball isn't introduced until much later in the
Oh,
series.
yeah.
You know, and it's kind of reverse of what you would expect because you think like the ball was like the first thing that they produced, but yeah, I mean during the Battle of Abaku, it's like nothing but balls and GMs.
And isn't it where that was what was produced first, but I guess in the original series, it didn't show up until later? Or are you saying that they produced it later?
I guess so. Yeah, I would have to
You
go
would have to
back and check
research
some
it.
lore because
Exactly.
but
Yeah,
but
and
yeah.
oh,
I
go ahead.
mean, if I were watching the show for the first time, let's like take the internet away from it. Like I would have thought that the ball was a new thing that they made.
Yeah, especially because it was if it was supported correctly, it did well in combat. It even
Mhm.
showed in MS Igloo how the hands that it had, the little arm manipulators were able to do a lot and help out. Um, Ball was designed to be a support for the GMs. Yeah, that's oh, I love this from trying to come up. Video game idea: Ace Combat 1 Year War. I would
Yeah.
love a game where it's just like core fighters. Because yeah, that's the other thing. The core fighters, before
Mhm.
the mobile suits, they were relying on like the aerial sort of combat or spaceship combat. And there was core fighters and core boosters. And
Mhm.
I guess the idea of the core booster was maybe for longer range or maybe higher atmosphere or space flight. I mean, I guess the core fighter could, but probably have to be close range to its mothership. Um,
Yeah, because I mean the core fighter itself really is just a docking mechanism for the mobile suits, right?
yeah.
Um so like they had the saberfish and what was the
Oh yeah.
there's like a different core booster type that they show in 8th MS team that kind of operates independently of a mobile suit. I think it's like the
I
jet
forget
core
what it's
booster.
called, but yeah, got it right over there fighting the DOP.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
Right before Norris Packard cuts it in half,
yeah,
right?
yeah. No, that so, uh, yeah, so that's something I want to dive into more and make videos about. It's like during the 1 Year
Like the
War,
fleet composition.
fleet composition. There you go. Great with words. That's actually the best way to put it. And it's cool because even Xeon, with how they were a lot more extreme with their production weapon development, they had more like unit types than the Federation did. Because they
Yeah.
even had the Zuda, they had all the water-based ones, they had, the Gelgoog, um, and I don't if it's canon or not, the Gaian, even though they took it out of the trilogy,
Yeah.
but
DOMs and all that good stuff.
yeah, and so that's interesting because what it seems like then is the villains, and this might be tropey for villains, but we see this in later Gundam, is like, eh, the characters had their specialized suits. I mean, that's even the thing in Wing pretty much.
Yeah.
Even though Wing does a good job of showing like the Leos, or isn't it like is it the Sandrock has the Magnax or something? I forget what you call them.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but the
Mogganok.
Mogganok
Okay.
core? Yeah.
Okay. And then in Seed, I think Seed doesn't I would even say Seed does a better job than OG Gundam of representing what did you call it again?
Oh, fleet composition?
Fleet composition. I gotta remember that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seed does a good job of showing off fleet composition.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool grunt suits in Seed for sure. Um, let's see. Oh, let's see what Garagi Zirkov has to say. Apologies for butchering that. Although would be awkward of the predecessors looking more advanced than the 1 Year War. Okay.
Yeah.
Like you can't say the F-22 Raptor and then the actual core fighter. Even during the Gundam 0079, the USAF were rolling with the F-15. Oh, that's actually neat. I didn't know that because I guess the idea is, and I forget if this is canon or not, like 1999 AD, like all of that is canon, and then
Oh, yeah.
2000 is like just one UC, right?
Okay.
Isn't it something like that?
I I was not aware of that because I thought that, like, Double O kind of carries on AD.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't I thought Double O set in AD.
Maybe
But
unfortunately, yeah, that would be cool to get,
I'm
check
not
out.
sure what year it is that that the Laplace bombing occurred when it's like, hey, farewell Anno Domini.
Yeah. Oh, he's saying it was
Yeah.
just during the making of 0079. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, about the F-15s. Yeah, and 00 is 80. Cool, thanks, Johnny Tacoma. Yeah,
Sweet.
that's
But
cool,
yeah,
and
it's funny you mentioned that because like, going back to like your example, and this is always something that's kind of interested you is like, the battleships and things like that. So like
Mhm.
in Star Wars, you don't have as many like the bad guy faction just has TIE fighters. Just plain TIE
Yeah,
fighters until you see Vader's, right?
yeah,
Whereas the rebels have the X-wing, which is kind
yeah.
of their default fighter, and then you've got a couple Y-wings as the bombers. They didn't introduce the A-wing until Return of the
Return of
Jedi,
the
is that
Jedi,
right?
yeah, and the B-wing in
And the
Return of the Jedi.
B-wing. So, it's almost like the Rebel Alliance has, like, these specialized unit fighters, whereas, uh, I mean, you don't really see any, like, TIE interceptors or any of, like, the specialized TIE fighters in the
Until
movies. Those
un
are only in video games.
No, the Return of the Jedi has the interceptor,
It
and
does have the
yeah,
interceptor?
and then Empire has the bomber. But
Yeah.
that's still not as much, and in fact, I think that's very interesting because if you look at Gundam, Xeon is almost a rebellion. They're rebelling against
It's
the
true.
Earth Federation's influence over the Earth sphere, and so then they have this variety of weapons because 'cause they're kind of, partly desperate, they have the money, I guess, because they've been kind of growing their own family, legacy.
Yeah.
And I guess and if we get more background details from Star Wars, especially from Andor, we can see that they were people of family dynasties with a lot of money that were backing the rebels. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Same things, but different sort of conflicts.
Yeah. Very, very different, context going on. Which of course begs the question, right? Because during the speech, during Giran's famous speech, he says that Xeon has 1/30th of the economic might of the Federation. And so it's like, oh, well, how have we been able to crank out all these mobile suits and stuff like that? It does make you wonder, like, what was the Federation spending all of their, well, either A, is Giran lying, which that's always on the table. Like, people
Right.
people tend to think
Yeah.
that just because a character says something that makes it true.
Yeah.
But, if we assume that Giran's telling the truth, then where is Xeon getting all of the money to create all these amphibious prototypes and these mobile armors and stuff, and the Federation's just sitting there like, "We're rolling the dice pretty hard on this white base thing turning." Like,
Well, that is interesting because if you look at Origin, they kinda try to set up the Federation being bad in a way. I guess they have the gun tanks rolling in and, but I feel like there could be even more backstory of that, of certain colonies that are just impoverished. Has nothing to do with Spacian versus Earthnoid, just or I'm using the wrong,
mhm,
uh, space pronouns, fiction I don't know. Uh, but, uh, what if there were people that were, yeah, in this impoverished colonies, and like Earth Federation is not helping us at all, and then
yeah.
it's easy to tap into these groups because I've learned when you hear about a side, that's a group of colonies.
Yeah, it's like a cluster.
And when I'm playing this Wii game, the there's the screen where it kind of shows the story, so the text is crawling up, and in the background is a 3D model of the Earth sphere. And as it's spinning around, and I need to get a raw file of this, it shows each cluster, and the clusters are like shaped. Like one would be a cube of colonies, another one would be like a star
Oh,
of colonies.
interesting.
So I don't know if that's canon. They made that up for the game, but that is also some interesting things to think about because due to trying to keep them in place gravitationally, they would have to distribute probably the colonies to have them set in specific ways, as they're circling or orbiting. I find that interesting.
Yeah, that stuff's very cool.
Um, okay, so I'm going to move on here real quick because I had that video release on Monday about the how to play that Gundam 0079 Sensen Wii game, which is a lot of fun. It seems to have a lot to it. There's a story mode, there's a versus mode. You can do two-player co-op and against each other, and then there's the ace mode where you can choose an ace pilot and you unlock them as you go. And it's the game has a side story with these characters, and I've never heard of these characters before. No one's talked about them. There's even a character that's like at the beginning, it's like openly gay because there's like this guy that's like new, and then this other guy's like, "Wow, you're cute," and I was like, "What?" I don't know if that was a mistranslation or they're just saying, "Hey, that's a gay character." I don't know. It's these new characters never heard of before. I I don't really understand the story too much, but it seems like you're with Xeon, but you're in GMs. That's like the one thing that I don't understand yet how that happened. I'll have to.
Yeah.
A lot of times when I play games, I'm playing for the gameplay and I skip the story, and then later I'm like, okay, why am I in a GM and I'm with Xeon? So,
I mean, they kinda do that in, 0081 as well, right? Like, when you
oh
first launch in your
yeah,
the first mission as the Invisible Knights team, you're like, "Wait a second, I've got a Zaku 1, a GM, and I think a Zaku 2," and you're like, "Why can't I get rid of this GM?"
no, I think the story's pretty good to explain that though.
Yeah.
In the Wii game, it because in the Wii game it's supposed to take place during 0079, and it's like what I don't know. So yeah, I'll have to dive because I'm gonna do a video of me reviewing game in general to let people know like how it is, if it's worth your time. But then I want to do a video on the story because these are new side story characters no one really talks about.
Yeah,
Um,
and because you said it was, like, kind of a spiritual successor to Rise from the Ashes,
yep.
just being a first-person Gundam game, but it's not
And
a direct sequel.
well, it's funny, yeah, not direct sequel. And it's funny because the beginning, the opening splash screen is what I used in my video. It's this White Dingo development or something like that. And it's like,
Yeah.
wow, that's a direct callback to Rise from the Ashes. Yeah, so yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, I'll do some more videos on that one because there's another game I played and I was shocked about this. So one was getting a 3DS emulator to work in the first place, and the 3DS emulator is fantastic because it allows you to choose a secondary screen.
Yeah.
So I had it set up where it was two screens. I have a little monitor below my big monitor, and they have a Gundam game on there that looks really good. If it wasn't for the resolution of the 3DS itself, it would look amazing because the 3DS was pretty good for its time. It
It
has
was.
lighting effects, particle effects, draw distance, and it plays like the PSP games. It's just basic melee combat, where you jump in, you fight, next level, you jump in and fight. I'll do a full review on that game, but that is totally a hidden gem. I think it's just called Gundam 3D Battle. Totally a hidden gem.
Now, do you think that you're missing much by not having the touch screen of the 3DS available to you? Because I know that, like, some games kind of rely on that gimmick, but typically Gundam games don't rely on the console gimmick.
That's a good question. So far, no, because what it seems to show are like the stats of your mobile suit, like your gauge for your thrust. So it leaves the UI clean, which is really cool.
I
Yeah.
love that.
And at your whoever the lady is that is like giving you your orders or whatever, she'll like pop in on that screen. Like,
Instead of, like, in the middle of
yeah,
your
yeah, which is really cool. And but I'm wondering how more immersive or enjoyable it would be on an actual 3DS because I can turn on the 3D. So I've been
It's true.
looking, and 3DSs nowadays are super expensive, except if you buy a Japanese one. The Japanese 3DSs are you can for 120 get their version of the new 3DS XL. It's called an LL. And so I'm thinking of doing that because I also wanted to get like all the Castlevania games, even though I've already played them. I just like to have
Yep.
them available. But the thing is, like, it one, from the video I did about the Wii game, there's the patch that translated. That's awesome. The thing is you need to have someone that can translate and has the ability to read game files in the way where they can create some sort of patch. The 3DS
Yeah.
one would need that. Um, but from what I see is not only could you patch an emulated game, but you could patch a game on a console. Like if there's some way to get to the root of it, like on a PS2, I guess if you use like the disk swapping technique and you have the hard drive hooked up, you can, load files onto it. So
Mhm.
it's it's a crime, and it's one of these things where not only I'm all down for preserving these Gundam games, but also giving them all the language options too. So anyone,
Yeah.
anywhere could play and enjoy a Gundam story from any game. Um,
Because
because
yeah, a lot of these games are technically readily available. I think, when I last time I checked on eBay, like 0081 was like 11 bucks, so it's yeah, I mean, you could get a physical disc of these games, but, like, who's
yeah,
going to buy it if you need to translate it as well? So, like you said, to in the best interest of preserving them and also attracting a new audience to the games that hasn't experienced it yet, it'd be nice to have
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And maybe in our mutual, friend group, we can identify, "Hey, you speak Japanese and
Oh yeah,
you are a hardware
hardware or
slash
something.
software developer."
Yeah,
Maybe we can, um, find some people to do that.
I'd love to
But
do that, and I think the first one we should do is Missing Link.
yeah.
So if anyone out there has any of those skills for that, reach out to me because I'd love to kind of put something together where we can figure out how to patch some of these games. Um, but yeah, yeah, I think that's about it for today. Again, not too much Gundam news coming out. Just waiting for that Freedom movie to drop. Hopefully that's good. Steven, am I missing anything? Anything else?
No, that's all I can think of.
Okay. Well, one thing I will mention is here shortly, maybe within the next week or two, I'm going to announce the winner of the Gunpla for the supporters. And I'm going to start doing
Mhm.
that. I think it makes it easy for me to track these people down when like someone wins something. I can get it to them. So yeah, if you're a supporter, uh, yeah, if you're a supporter, you're already entered. So um,
Against your will.
against your
You're
will.
you're potentially getting a model kit, so
And what has happened before too is when there's times where someone has won something and then I let them know in the replay, "Hey, give it to someone else," or, you know, "Keep it," or whatever.
yeah.
If that's your thing, let me know and I'll just draw someone else. Not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, the first giveaway I ever did, the person just never responded to any of the emails or messages that I sent them, so I was like, "Alright, number 2."
That's
It's
funny. That's funny because the first time I did a giveaway and someone won, they lived in Australia. Which one that is in relation to Gundam, you see, but, but 2, that was like, "Okay, this shipping, oh my god." But it was more of the th it wasn't a money situation, it was more of just a neat thing. "Oh, I get to
that is pretty cool.
have a winner in Australia," so anyway. Okay, well, that's about it. Everyone, thanks for joining, that was a good time. Have a good weekend. Yeah, we'll talk next week. See y'all.